So friends, this webinar we are hosting and the session is COVID-19 and its impact on the mental health of students. So as you would be knowing that uh, in the last 3 months, COVID-19 has its toll in India, and especially schools are closed. And this would definitely impact the health of mental health of students. And so to discuss this very important point, today I have Ramya ma'am and Amrit. So let me first introduce them. So Ramya ma'am, she's adjunct faculty in IIM Bangalore, and she did her studies from IIT Madras and IIM Ahmedabad, and also went on to study in London School of Business. And she teaches organizational behavior. So I think she has a lot of experience in this and an expert in this field. And also I have Amrit with me. Amrit is my friend. We studied together in engineering college, and then he went on to join Jindal, and he started his own startup called Lab Cafe. And after that, he has started a new startup called Kohai. He's the founder, wherein if I just to give a hint about Kohai, Kohai works in the domain of mental well-being, and it specifically caters to students. So we'll discuss about this in detail. So ma'am, just to start with, you would be knowing, generally we were told that humans are social beings and we like to interact with other humans socially. But because of COVID-19, we are in a lockdown phase. And this has definitely taken a toll on the mental well-being, especially of students when they cannot interact with their friends and classmates. So what do you think, ma'am, this will have, what effect will this have on the mind, mental wealth of students?
So I think you have pretty much struck the nail on its head, which is we are social beings, and especially students and children, like for them, in fact, if you start looking at mental well-being, it's not just about, so of course it's about, their emotions, but before that there are thoughts, and then there's the physical activity as well, and socializing. And typically, if you look at teenagers, they also have, it's the dynamics with their parents, and now they're locked in with the parents 24 hours. They're not used to being under so much surveillance. So it's a very difficult situation. It's a very unique situation. And when it comes to these kinds of situations, things can turn either way. And it's not that early in the lockdown right now. So we have started getting stories, and we're hearing about how different people are coping. And it is possible that some children can actually cope well with this and take to it and change, because children are also resilient. But it is also, we're hearing lots of stories of people who are feeling extremely frustrated and extremely sort of almost like locked in. The quarantine is not just being locked in, but locked in with their feelings and thoughts. And so that is a very pressure cooker like situation that it can be for some. But I do want to emphasize that it doesn't have to be that way, but that is one possibility.
Correct. Ma'am, I would like to add on to this. In these scenarios, like in which there is a lockdown and the parents are kind of living with their children to a more number of hours, actually they are spending more number of hours with the students. And also they need to take care regarding this kind of education of these students. There are many online companies like who are kind of getting into these homes and providing an online education via schools. In these things, we find that through these systems, through these modern technology solutions provided to them, we find that they are either busy through telephone kind of phones or laptops or tabs, kind of in which online education is being provided to them, but the number of screen time hours spent by them, by these students, is like getting added to many folds. Okay, now this can also be adverse. Don't you think that way? Kind of ये जो screen timing के चलते कुछ एक aggravation भी आ सकता है उनके में problem से related. So what do you think about that?
Oh, bilkul. And here I'm going to wear two hats, actually, that of a parent as well as somebody who actually, looks at stress, the effects of stress on people, which is, of course, there is a lot of concern. And screen time is something that parents have always been trying to control for their children. And now it's suddenly like, hey, I'm studying, right? Or even, in fact, what has happened is the interaction. So like you said, humans are social. So I'm just going to give you an example here. So like my son, when he plays video games and when he has to play, he likes to play only when he's also on hangout with his friends and they're all playing together. So even playing video games is a social experience for them. And they had been doing this before COVID also. And of course, they're doing it more now during COVID. And somehow, I tend to find that more acceptable because at least you're having a social interaction because, you pass the child playing and you can hear the interaction that they're doing the teamwork and they're building their leadership and influencing and negotiation skills and all of that with one another. But of course, the fact is that they are still glued in front of the screen time and looking at that. So I've also been speaking to a lot of parents and we've been sharing notes. And what I see is that, as a parent, you will have to make this trade-off in terms of even the social interaction and the learning is coming through the screen, then why not allow it? And what you mentioned is, of course, the price you're paying is that the sheer number of hours in front of the screen just go up. And maybe it's like you make do with what you can.
Okay.
So ma'am, we all know that COVID is here to stay for some time until hopefully we get a vaccine. So what are the positives that we can, especially for students, that we can generate from this? What are the positive outcomes or sunlight areas that you see can we get from this situation?
Okay. So I think that's actually a very nice question. And in fact, I commend you for even asking that question because underneath that question is the assumption that, hey, we are in a tight spot. None of us have chosen this. It just sort of happened. And now what can we do, right? When it comes to students, we've already acknowledged and we talked about how it can be overwhelming to be locked in, to be in front of the computer screen the whole day. And yet as part of sunlight areas, there's a thing that, students, this is a time when students can really learn their own independence. Okay, so they actually learn to be independent. So they get to choose, right? They get to do things, they get to trust themselves, they have to be responsible. It's not like you're sitting in a class and there's a teacher breathing down on you. In fact, a lot of schools, because of the bandwidth issues, they actually ask students to keep the video off when they're having the online classes, which means that if you think of a time like when we were in school, I don't know about you, but at least I was like, okay, behind, under the teacher's teaching something, but under the desk, you're doing something else you want to, and you want to sneak and do something. So here, there is all the opportunity you want. You're attending a class online and you could be doing anything else. But because there's nobody monitoring you, you're taking the onus and responsibility for your education. So it's not no more like, I have to do this for the sake of the teacher. So that I think is a huge growth in independence. We might see students learning that independence and responsibility. The other thing I see happening, and this again, I see this happening both as a parent as well as, as someone who's interested in these subjects, which is, I'm going to draw an analogy here. So we're talking a lot about social isolation, the fact that we're not getting to speak a lot with people and socialize, right? And we always tend to think of this as a bad thing, but there is a positive side to it also. And I'm going to tell you about the first Vipassana camp that I attended. So this was many years ago. It was like 15 years ago. And Vipassana is actually, so it's a 10-day meditation retreat where you are completely under social isolation. So even though the group sittings are, you're sitting, but you're basically with your own thoughts and emotions, and you're learning a form of emotions for 10 continuous days. And you hand over your phone, you don't even talk to people. And you would say this is extreme social isolation. And this actually is done to help you in your personal growth. So when I went to my first Vipassana camp, at least I came out a transformed person for the better. And this is what happens to 99% of people who go to Vipassana retreats like this. And why is that? That's also because there is something beautiful, something very strong about going into yourself and learning to befriend your own thoughts, your own emotions, see what's going on, stay with yourself in a calm, relaxed manner where no one's breathing down your line. I mean, for a lot of children, students, even adults, life before COVID was like this complete rat race. The minute you get up, you have to rush, breakfast, school bus. There's no time to really sit and be with yourself. And then you finish your homework, come back from school, eat food, someone behind you, go to play, do your homework. And there's strong deliverables, right? Now, finally, things have slowed down and there's time and space. So you can also see this as the opportunity for human beings to actually move back into the human being state than the human doing state, where you're doing, running. And this can have, I'm not saying it necessarily will, some people might succumb under that intense pressure of being with yourself. And that happens in Vipassana camps also. Around 5% of the people typically run away because they can't handle it. But for the other people who stick through it, it can also be an uplifting experience. And that is also something that I see as a possibility. And dare I say, I already see that in some people, that they're using this time to slow down and be with themselves, understand themselves, and grow as a result of that. And the younger they can do it, the better. We might have a transformed species at the end of this, who knows?
Correct.
Maybe
getting this analogy which you said, rightly mentioned right now about the Vipassana, means what I think is there were age olds, like right from the Dwapar age or the Treta Yugs, like there were like पहले आता था ब्रह्मचार्य, उसके बाद आता था गृहस्थ, फिर वानप्रस्थ, फिर उसके बाद जो चौथा था जिसमें त्यागना होता था. So what I feel is after this pandemic or like during this lockdown, there are like 4 to 5 hours of studying, from the schools. Okay. Now, what I see is I also follow various people on Instagram or on Facebook or on LinkedIn. What I find is they present their children's portrait or like sketches or art things over the social medias. Now, what I find is where were these things before the lockdown? It only came during this lockdown when these children are getting their own spaces also, which like 1 से 1.5 घंटा चला जाता था school time कि हाँ बस में जाना है. Now those things are striked off. Now the student is with various time things. Like now they are also utilizing various time zones. या जो gaps जो हैं, time leads जो हैं, they are being converted into certain artistic things, and we are finding various poetic people or artistic people. In fact, various sketches are also there. So what I think is, and those things are getting actually revived, like those things which were done in the Puratan Yugs, and now these things are getting revamped, I guess. Means kind of the restructuring is kind of possibly, I might be wrong, I guess, but I think कि एक analogy जा रही है उस तरफ. What I feel.
Yeah, no, I think you made some wonderful observations because, where was all this art earlier? The potential was always there, but the time and space was not there to bring it out. Yeah. And also with relationships, I think in the last 2-3 months, the amount of conversation that I've had with my son, the amount of conversation that I've had with my husband, actually with my mother also through video conference, because she's not here, has been way more than I had in the entire previous year. And I know this is just not this is not just my story.
Ma'am, actually, what I feel is that this pandemic, or like I would say preferably lockdown, ये चीजों या फिर silver lining, people are trying to find out things. Like there were various massacres happened before, like in the world or to be very specific in India. But people have come up or emerged very beautifully out of these situations, and they are like very artistic in solving these problems by their own way, own methodology. ये जो system है, वो खुद ही kind of they have evolved. So I think this is the beautiful side of this lockdown, I would say. And related to what you said,
we might get beaten up if we say beautiful, but yes, this is one of the positive aspects. Not acknowledging all the pain and hardship that's also happening. Yeah.
Correct, ma'am. So related to the relationships which you rightly mentioned now, means kind of before the lockdown, I hardly used to call to my parents, in fact. But right now it has become a routine, which like automatically goes to the call automatically goes to my parents, my sister, my other family members or relatives. these things are happening, and kind of people are finding a connection amongst the people so as to kind of talk and kind of discover some things more. So this is how the bonding is getting more nurtured, I would say.
Just to add on to this, ma'am, just as we are discussing the various engagement activities or plans that are actually happening. So, how do you see schools and parents more getting more involved in this, getting more involved in the lives of students, which will ultimately, if I can say, this would be a positive change for students and it could lead to their development. So, what roles do you think schools and parents can play in this?
Wow. So I think they should start with where you started, which is they should ask this question first of themselves, right? So all the schools, the principals, the teachers, the parents, instead of just saying, oh no, like, oh no, we are in the situation and we've lost this and this and this, because clearly you can count all the things that we've lost because of the lockdown situation. But we all should start asking the question about, okay, how can we reinvent ourselves, reinvent maybe the whole idea of education, schooling, whatever it is, or the relationship, role of a teacher, role of a parent, all of that, to see how we can contribute positively. And I can give a few ideas, but they'll be my ideas. And I think if each person asks themselves these ideas, they'll get many more ideas, right? So teachers, for example, teachers and principals in schools can start acknowledging that they have a lovely relationship with students, right? Students are going to log in. They have these conversation times. They don't have the students in their premise. That's what is different. So they can, like in higher education, at least what the move, and I can speak a little about management education because I know more what's happening, but then I'll draw the analogy for school. It's like we're moving more into the flipped classroom method, where in terms of when we get online with the students, we don't spend time lecturing like we would typically in classes, but you send pre-recorded content to them that they can see at their own time, own pace, maybe podcasts, right? So they can lie down on the sofa, they're walking, they put their headphones on and they can listen to the lectures, to the content, to the theory. When they come online, so that way we're minimizing that screen time also. When they come online, it's like how you, me and Amrita talking, right? It's the interaction. We maximize that. We use this to connect. And that is something that schools can also do. And here, I do know schools who are still, they have the classroom, they go on Zoom, the teacher has a blackboard, and actually they're still solving, doing this, trying to do exactly what they were doing in the old school, but replicating on Zoom. That may not be the best utilization of what the situation is presenting to us, because that would mean now you're keeping the child with the eyes fixed on the screen for so long. Mm-hmm. But if we can, in fact, just, get audiobooks, the child listens, learns, and then you have just, a crisp debriefing session, which is more interactive, that might help work. Breaking up the students into smaller groups to have these discussions online. Correct. So a lot of these things we have to reinvent these things.
I think in the world of Kariminati, in the world of Bhuvan Baum, like when the world has given us these few people, Bhuvan Baum, there are Ashish Chanchalani, Tanmay Bhatt, all these comedians who have found out spaces in kind of entertaining people. Okay. Now, you never know what might intrigue the students. Like, what does a student find and kind of a way in which he would be entertained? In this proper era, jab kisi ko pata nahi hai ki, nobody knows ki what would be the likings of these students. And still, there are many likes on these comedians or like various artists. So we need to be very improvised in this kind of, we need to have a certain improvisations regarding building certain tools so that it could intrigue the students towards education. What I'm getting from your perspective actually, we need to find out certain ways, and we never know. So we need to try on various kind of avenues.
I think improvisation is the right word, right? Improvisation, experimentation, and a lot. And you also asked about parents, right? I think the same thing with parents. Like you can, in a way, it's such a gift, right? That you get so much time to spend with your child. So I don't know how the child sees it, right? It's like I'm always there. Mama can always come and talk to me. I don't have my privacy, but at least for the parents, it's like, hey, your child is home with you, so you can really use that time.
Yeah, ma'am, do you think that whatever is coming in my mind right now is like there are parents, there are students, means kind of their own children at a single home. Now there are schools who are getting into these houses through various mediums. Okay. Now, once the connection is getting established every day for like around 4 to 5 hours, shouldn't there be an engagement program in which like there should be a kind of dedication of time towards parents, dedication of time towards their nutrition, dedication of time towards their kind of mental exercises, dedication of time towards the physical kind of or social
Sure.
exercises, so that
Absolutely.
every child has a kind of or has an inbuilt kind of routine made in himself, so that he follows them and gets them in kind of imbibing in himself. So
Yes.
those can also play a role, I guess, in these kind of times.
Absolutely. I mean, and in fact, what you're suggesting, I don't think this is only for COVID times, right? Even before COVID
It can be
times, we
for,
needed
yeah,
this.
who
We
knows
needed
that
something that is a
like
holistic touch points, connection, guidance, and mentoring for students. And in COVID times, lockdown times, again, we should not lose track of the same holistic agenda, and it's extremely important. So, absolutely.
correct. Because
Yeah.
right now students are not able to play outside. Yeah, agreed. But so what? Kind of we cannot be like these people who say that मेरा बच्चा तो बाहर खेल नहीं सकता, उसके लिए क्या कर सकते, खेलना तो है ही नहीं उसको. There can be various possibilities in which he could play and can remain at home as well at the same time. So these are the improvisations which I'm talking about. Ki how could various people in kind of schools engage these students in certain activities, so that the student, although he's not allowed to play outside, but he can manage those things like this much amount of calories burned. ये होना ही है, तो वो किसी और तरीके से भी हो सकती है. That is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Just to ask
Yeah.
you, Amrit, because Amrit he is working with schools through his Kohai initiative, planning engagement plans for students. So, what has been your experience, Amrit, when it comes to this?
No, we have been into various schools for the past 5 years, and what I find is like there are various schools who are kind of going towards certain technology. There are various companies who are kind of sufficing to this problem, in which we find that they are providing solutions towards the academic wellness, as well as some are kind of concentrating towards the mental wellness of the children. As we know that both are important. Now, if we come to know a fact, if we probably heard about aqua regia, like these are those chemicals which are used to mine the gold elements. Okay. Now, aqua regia combines of, now if I give an analogy of this, like this is a mixture of chemical mixture, which is kind of find out the good thing out of the good things. Okay. Now, if
I like that.
okay, if we kind of the good thing out of the good things, if I say, now aqua regia is made up of HNO3 and 3 times of HCl. Okay, 3 parts of HCl and one part of HNO3 make an aqua regia solution. Okay, so if I place these two things like mental wellness and academic wellness, no, this can kind of bring out the good from the good people, in fact, and that can be portrayed out so as to become a successful, or like which we call it as a happier life. So we need to kind of create that solution, that aqua regia, in which kind of we can manage or kind of place these students in these kind of gooder environment or kind of better environment, so that this entire thing comes into a brighter picture. So yeah, that was my analogy actually. This is how the mental health and academic health should be placed. So here is where we are working towards, and we are coming up with a, yes ma'am.
No, you finish and then I will say.
Okay. So ma'am, here is where we are kind of playing a role in which we are kind of giving importance to both academic wellness and the mental wellness, so that the student doesn't face any situation kind of at a later point of time towards his happier life or towards his decisive career life. Kind of those are the things which we are catering to. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. No, I loved your analogy. And I also like the ratio you got into the chemistry of it, right? 3 parts of one to the other. And I just wanted to offer a different analogy there, which is in fact the way I see it, academic wellness and mental wellness. And you're looking at both of these. And I would say they're not even, look at it as foundation and building on the foundation. So in fact, I would say mental wellness or emotional wellness, if I may say mental emotional well-being, is the foundation, and the academic wellness or your IQ and the way you do and how much you can study and memorize and how sharp your intellect is builds on that. Because, and this, I have a lot of experience in personal experience. I have experience as, a professional in my field, a lot where you can have a whole lot of IQ and your memory can be really good and you might be really intelligent. And because you've crumbled emotionally or because you're not feeling good enough, you're not happy enough, you don't motivate, you're like, yeah, whatever reasons, the whole gamut of things that can affect us at an emotional level, that entire building is of no use. It's like there's no foundation, it just collapses
very easily. It could be collapsed.
You can't perform, there's no results to show.
Correct.
And vice versa is actually like if you have the emotional well-being, right, the mental emotional well-being, and you build the academic prowess and the skills on top of that, that can really flourish. Then this begins to act like the manure and it can really make you excel, right? So
correct.
If you are at 80%, you can go to 99% because you have this entire backing of
correct. Rightly quoted. So this is what we are approaching towards, kind of mixture of both the things, so that now then to monitor these things, there are various engagement programs which we are bringing in. So kind of we will be elaborating about those things in later sessions. These are the basically pillars, like these two, which you rightly mentioned. I proposed it through a chemistry. You proposed it through the real life, actually. So
no, I also used an analogy of foundation.
That's what I said. Kind of real life analogy and kind of ये एक थोड़ा सा वैसा रह जाता है. So anywho, so this is what kind of it is going to be built on, and let's see, ma'am, how does it go ahead, and we are really looking forward to kind of make it more big.
Can I just say one more thing to answer a question that Abhimanyu had asked earlier about the role that schools can play, right? And this is just striking me now, like after we've talked about all these things, the connection that for a long time, I think there was almost like a divide of responsibility, at least when I was growing up. And I love all my teachers, okay? And some of them might land up seeing this video also. I love them, but the assumption was that my parents are looking after my emotional and mental well-being at home. And in school, my teachers were looking after my intellectual capabilities, honing it, sharpening the academic profiles. And to be fair, we were like, 50 students in a class, one teacher, and I don't know if and the teachers were also like, they're not coaches and therapists, right? So they are experts, they're subject matter experts. And that was the assumption. And I think what Abhimanyu asked now was, can schools start re-looking at the role that they play in a student's life? And I say, why not? And so if schools start looking, and I think schools would want to do this, because when schools start recognizing that the academic performance is not standalone, they're not catalysts, foundations to it, then why would schools also not decide to make this curriculum more holistic? Because not every parent has the bandwidth, time, expertise, or maybe even, just the ability to provide that sense of coaching, counseling, or whatever it is, support for mental, emotional well-being. And so if schools can bring this in, that would be great. So schools say that, we will also look after your mental, emotional well-being, because this is part of our job, and we will do that. And also knowing that this will help us in ultimately what you might have come to us for admissions in the first place, which is your grade marks and track records, because we know that this will feed into the way you perform in your academics and give you those results.
Yeah, ma'am. There should be a proper mechanism, kind of, in which the principal, when sitting at his own office, can have a look for the entire over the entire students, and accordingly think that, oh, now these many percentage of students are going through these issues. Now, what should be the kind of mechanism to cope up them? Like, so that they could come out of these situations, can perform well in kind of academics. If they are like a mediocres, they could go to the upper ends. If they are kind of a lower performance, they could come to the mediocre and accordingly come to the excelling side. So this is what the entire thing, I think the principals or the school management committee should kind of come up with these ideas, so that there is an improvement, continual improvement of the students going on by the kind of every stepping stone they are taking up. So I think this should be the approach actually. Well, let's see how do they kind of take this up kind of in the coming future.
And I think schools are now realizing this, and lines are being drawn. They're expanding their boundaries, because schools are now, for example, Kohai, as Amrit said, is also collaborating with schools. So schools are also realizing that both these aspects, they complement each other, and both are required for the holistic development of students. And I think going forward, I think this would be the method.
Absolutely.
Correct.
And if I may add one last analogy, which I just realized. So I'm just going to take the analogy from the corporate world, where if you look at schools being performance oriented, because at one level, the function of the school is also to get toppers and make people excel and all, right? If you look at the corporate world, it is even more single minded in terms of performance and productivity and the bottom line. And even the corporate world has realized that if they want better performance from their employees, they better start looking at their mental, emotional well-being. And corporates have completely come onto the board. And this I know because I do this work, right? So they are really investing in coaching programs, training programs, and all of that for the emotional well-being
Correct.
of people. But they recognize the connection.
Correct.
So I think it's high time schools also start recognizing that connection and make it a part of their responsibility.
Yeah. Rightly said, ma'am, because I think in a corporate world, the employers consider their employees as an asset. Now, for the asset not to convert into a liability, they kind of okay. So I think the school should also kind of bring up these ideas, so that the children.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say a liability for the children. Kind of, it is a very harsh word for the children actually.
I know,
so,
but
negative things could be kind of enlarged if the things are not taken care of.
Absolutely.
So for that reason, I think that your analogy is kind of correct according to me, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
So this is.
It was really a very wonderful and insightful discussion that we had, and hopefully we'll again have this.
Yes, we can keep this conversation going.
Yes. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amrit.